Hi, my name is Stanley, and like so many other large companies in Singapore, the development of CapitaLand is directly impacted by the growth of Singapore itself. And the root of CapitaLand can actually be traced back to a certain bank by the name of Development Bank of Singapore, or DBS. So the CapitaLand brand was actually formed in the year 2000 after the merger of DBS Land and Pidemco Land. The story involved multiple generations of famous civil servants, Temasek Holding, DBS, and even Singapore Technology. And so today, let's look into the story of CapitaLand and how it unfolds. But before we begin, this video is brought to you by our Premium Club, where we provide regular webinars and report for our members of learning more about investing and also personal finance. We also go through in-depth stock analysis together. And in fact, we'll be doing a detailed stock analysis on CapitaLand investment soon for all our members. So if that is something that you're interested in, do check on the link below to see how you can become a member of our Premium Club and how much value we can add to your investment journey. And also, please take note that I have been alerted that there have been multiple accounts on Telegram impersonating me. So please be careful on Telegram, and we only have one sharing account on Telegram, and I personally do not communicate at all on Telegram. So if you come across any account, just assume that it is a scam. And if in doubt, feel free to reach out to us to find out more. You can find all our official social media on my account at learnwithstanley.com. Now, let's get started. The story starts with Singapore gaining independence from Malaysia in 1965. So the government at that time is eager to develop the economy of Singapore. But the problem is there is no real infrastructure. In particular, there's no real national banking infrastructure. Many of the local banks are privately owned and set up to serve certain community that the owner might be associated with. So without any proper banking structure in the country, the government started taking up the job of being the financier of mega projects in the country. The Economic Development Board, EDB, was actively providing loans for developing projects in Singapore at the time. Then came 1968. The government decided that it should set up a proper bank to take over the role from EDB. And the bank ended up being Development Bank of Singapore, DBS. Since DBS was set up to take over and expand the duty of financing from EDB, the first chairman that was called upon to set up the bank is none other than Mr. Hon Siu Sing, the chairman of EDB at the time. Although as a civil servant, Mr. Hon was really an entrepreneur and a trailblazer at heart. He sat as the founding chairman of DBS, and he brought over many of his staff from EDB to set up this new bank with him. So in July 1968, DBS was planned to start with 100 million Sing dollar of capital. The government promised that it will invest 49 million, and then other banks and financial institutions that is operating in Singapore will invest another 25 million towards the new bank. And then finally, the last 26 million is to be raised from the public and outside investor. So the first task for this new team was actually to go out and raise that 26 million for the company that hasn't even started operation yet. So DBS might even be seen as the first SPAC of Singapore, right? But unlike many of the SPACs of today, this investment turned out to be great for the early investor. And just from this exercise alone, we can see that Mr. Hon and his team are really true entrepreneur. Because during that time to raise money from an IPO, the standard is to pay the broker a 2% promotional fee to help prepare the prospectus and also market the share. But DBS felt that 2% is too high of a fee, and they just decided that they're going to do the IPO by themselves. They prepared the prospectus by themselves and published both the document and the forms on the newspaper. So anyone who wants to subscribe to the IPO can actually just cut out the form, fill it up, and send it back to DBS with the check. So it really marks that they are the true disruptor of fundraising in Singapore. But in the end, the broker gave in and just decided to help them distribute the share without any fees. And because this is a government-backed company, many people apply to invest in DBS. So naturally, the fundraising turned out to be a success. And DBS was born. DBS then took the role as a financier from EDB But also, it has a mandate to stimulate the development of Singapore. So the bank would need to look across different sectors to help improve the economy of Singapore. And one such sector is the property development industry. So that year as well, Mr. Horn set up DBS Land. Mr. Horn was only chairman for DBS for 2 years, but he laid the foundation of the future development for this bank. He helped lay out the Singapore Industrialization Plan, i.e. the Jurong Industrial Estate. And then Mr. Horn stepped down in 1970 to join the government as the Minister of Finance. Sadly though, Mr. Horn held that position till 1983, where he suddenly passed away from a heart attack. On the other side, at DBS, his successor, Mr. How Yong Chong, was appointed and served as chairman from 1970 to 1979. Mr. How was also started his career as a civil servant. He was born in 1923, actually, in Malacca, and he happened to be a schoolmate of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew during their time in Raffles Institution in Singapore. Mr. How then started his career as a teacher and then moving on to different positions throughout the government sector. And then by 1960, he was appointed as the inaugural CEO of the Housing Development Board, or HDB, of Singapore. And by 1970, he was appointed to become the chairman of DBS. And it was also during this time that DBS Land embarked on some of the most iconic development. One of them being the development of Plaza Singapura. The mall was a very special project because only DBS Land could have pulled this off due to the strong relationship it needs with the government. For one, the land of Plaza Singapura sat just beside the Istana, and DBS Land would have to have a constant discussion with the government to follow specific security checks and precautions. Plaza Singapura also broke tradition when DBS wanted set up a unified mall managed by just one party with an anchor tenant in place. So, because at that time, most of the mall on Orchard Road are strata title, meaning that each store has a different owner. So the layout and tenant mix can be a little bit messy, and it's really hard to come to a consensus between owners to make major decisions. So DBS Land set out to develop a new type of shopping mall. They secure Yaohan, the largest department store from Japan at that time, to become their anchor tenant. And then they also satisfied all the requirements by the government and was able to build up the mall. The mall turned out to be a success, and it really influenced how malls are being developed in Singapore later on. Another iconic property that DBS Land was involved in was the refurbishment of Raffles Hotel. But it was in 1980 that DBS Land embarked on its most iconic project. At the time, DBS Land was already a well-established property developer in Singapore, and it was thinking to create a city within a city kind of development. It's a shopping mall with everything from shops to office to hotel, and housing the actual tallest hotel in the world. The development was built on site of the original Raffles Institution, the first school in Singapore, and also the alma mater of Mr. How, the chairman, and also Prime Minister Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. The construction took about 6 years and was finally completed in 1986, with the tallest hotel at the time opening, the 73-story Westin Stanford. So by the 1990s, DBS Land was already listed on the stock exchange, and DBS Group continued to hold around a 24.9% stake in the company. And by the time, the Singapore government has also set up multiple property companies. One of the fastest growing property companies was called CapitaLand. It has a portfolio of many resettlement projects from the Urban Redevelopment Authority, or URA. And it has also started to invest overseas as well. CapitaLand was unique in the way that it started venturing into different type of property business. For example, it went into the asset management business by co-sponsoring a $193 million fund with ING Real Estate at the time. And by 1996, Singapore Sovereign Fund Temasek Holding gained full control of CapitaLand by acquiring through their operating company, Singapore Technology. Singapore Technology is a famous government-linked company in Singapore, and it owns many popular companies throughout its history, such as Sembcorp, ST Engineering, and also Chartered Semiconductors. And then as the story moved on to the year 2000, the banking sector in Singapore was finally liberalized, and regulation requires that DBS to divest completely out of its non-core banking business. So that's when Singapore Technology decided to bid for the stake of DBS from DBS. The bid closed, and Singapore Technology brought over a significant stake through their property arm, CapitaLand. Then it comes the restructuring exercise for the two companies. In fact, it's actually a reverse merger exercise. DBS Land brought over CapitaLand and making CapitaLand into a listed entity. And finally, the combined group was renamed as CapitaLand, and the brand that we know today. The merger was explained by the Executive Director of Temasek, Madam Ho Chin. She explained that Pidemco has expanded overseas, and the scale it needs to really compete in the international market is so much bigger. And the only solution that Singapore can compete internationally successfully is to become much bigger in scale. So the only rational way is for companies within the government control to start consolidating and merge together. We still see much of CapitaLand in the current CapitaLand. Its fund management business was expanded after the merger. And for example, its hospitality business, the Somerset brand was actually brought over from Pidemco. And also the group acquired the Escort brand after the merger. So when the group first got merged in the year 2000, the combined group generated about a 2.9 billion revenue and a net profit of 105 million. And all the way up until the most recent restructuring again at the year 2021, the group was generating a revenue of around $5.5 billion and a profit of $1.3 billion for its shareholder. In the early years of CapitaLand, one of the key milestones was the IPO of Capital Mall Trust in 2002. Singapore has always wanted to promote the REIT market in Singapore, but prior to Capital Mall Trust, there was no real successful REIT listing in Singapore. And that's because a ton of investor education is needed, and also there need to be a success story to demonstrate the investment merit of a REIT. And CapitaLand Mall Trust turned out to be the one key REIT that opened the floodgate to the REIT market of Singapore. And it has a strong portfolio of local popular malls and also the backing of the government. So it became the first REIT to break through and found success in its IPO. After that, the Singapore investor really became more comfortable with REITs, and Capital Mall Trust really plays a big part in making the REIT market in Singapore a success today. So over the last 20 years, CapitaLand has really duplicated many of its successful models in different sectors of real estate. For example, after the successful listing of Capital Mall Trust, it started listing other REITs on the public market as well. On top of that, with the success of Raffles City development, it now has duplicated 10 more Raffles City development throughout China. So the company continued to grow over the last few decades. And the last milestone that I really want to mention happens in 2019, when it announced that it will be merging yet again with another Temasek property company, this time with Ascendas Singbridge. Although Ascendas Singbridge was a private company under Temasek, it has already multiple Ascendas sponsored REIT and the SGX by that time. So this 11 billion mega acquisition came another round of restructuring for CapitaLand. Many of the REIT between CapitaLand and Ascendas are combined, and more critically, CapitaLand itself was split into two. One being CapitaLand Investment, the real estate investment management arm, and also CapitaLand Development, the privatized property development arm. And since 2021, only the fund management side of business, CapitaLand Investment, remain as a listed entity. Today, CapitaLand Investment has stake and is the manager of many listed REIT, namely CapitaLand Integrated Commercial Trust, CapitaLand Ascendas REIT, CapitaLand Escort Trust, CapitaLand China Trust, CapitaLand India Trust, and CapitaLand Malaysia Trust. Today, CapitaLand Investment is a $15 billion fund management company listed on SGX, and it offers around a 4% dividend yield for investor. This means it's paying out dividend amounting around $600 million a year. All that tracking back to the $49 million invested by the government to start DBS in 1968. It turns out that politicians can be a pretty good entrepreneur too. So that's all for this week on our deep dive into the history of CapitaLand. If you want to continue the conversation and learn more about our stock analysis portion of this company, which we will be sharing for our Premium Club members only, you can go to valueinvestasia.com to find out more about all this great content that we provide within our Premium Club. And also, again, to find out all our official social media channel, you can just go to learnwithstanley.com and you can reach out to us anytime. And so that's it from me. Till we meet again, my name is Stanley. Invest safely.